Thank you. And Bimla, I can just take a seat there. Yeah, Tamara, were you going to sit over here? Thank you. Whatever you like to sit, comfortably. Thank you. And we also have two retreatants who are shy, but we've got you a space at the front. Please over there. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Just where the flowers are. Yeah. So, so take a seat. And I'll just do a quick intro. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming to the Three Jewels Outreach Center. This place has been open to the public for over 18 years and has been a place where people come to connect to some part of themselves that needs uncovering and understanding. We are very fortunate tonight to have, sorry for not protecting you, 8 people that have recently, very recently, completed 1,000 days in isolation. 3 years, 3 months, and 3 days of silent retreat, practicing the stuff you learn in mystical traditions of the East, in yogic traditions, with masters of these traditions, through a lineage of these traditions. What we're about to connect to today is a rare thing on the planet, truly. And for some reason, we're the guys here. We're the guys and girls connecting to these ideas. And I hope, and I trust, and I know with certainty, having spent most of today with these rare people, that we're in for a personal treat if you're open to it, if you're open to hearing what needs to be heard. So I hope that for each of you, you hear beauty and you hear wisdom and you hear a calling for bettering our world. I'm deeply grateful for your presence, and I'm deeply grateful for your time, and more so for the incredible work you've done for the last 1,000 days. And so we're lucky, and without further ado, I'd like to explain the format of today. For the first hour or so, it'll be just a 10-minute open sharing, 10 minutes each person letting you their insights or their experience of 3-year retreat. And then you're welcome to write your questions down if you have any questions. Sam's got some question papers and pens that will be going around. And then in the second half, after the break, we'll collect those questions and we'll spread them around and try and answer as many of those as we can for the second half, to have some kind of order to the question and answer. And then it's a party after that. You can take them out to dinner, you can invite them to also. This is also probably the last time we'll have a big teaching like this at the Three Jewels, if not the second last time, because the Three Jewels is moving. And so at the end of the talk, we'll show you a little video about what our intention for this space is. So thank you for your time, blessings. And I'd like to start off with maybe a mandala offering, yeah, which is in our tradition a way to bribe for goodness. Sashi Pugi Jishin Metotra Rira Linshin Yende Empadi Sangde Shindu Miteguargi Dropu Namda Shinla Chuparsho Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kaminyatayami
Sangye shirang saki choknanga Jamshu bardu dakni gyapsuchi Daki jinyen gi personam ki Drola kanchir sangye druparsho Sangye shirang saki choknanga Janchu bardu dakni gyapsuchi Daki jinyen gi personam ki Rola benchir sangye drupasho Sangye jirang soki choknamba Jamchu bardu dakni gyapsuchi Daki jinyen gi personam ki Drola benchir sangye drupasho
So you have 10 minutes of open sharing. Maybe we should introduce each other by name first so we know who's in the room, and then Bimla, you could go first.
Hi, I'm Bimla.
I'm Grant.
Togo. I'm Kristen.
James Connor.
My name's Tamara. Okay, here we go. I'm a little nervous. Please bear with me. I've got notes, and hopefully I won't look at them, but if I space out, have them here. And I just want to say thank you so much for supporting us through this incredible time of our lives. And I'll talk a little bit about where I was before, and then a little bit during, and then maybe a few realizations after the retreat. And I grew up in upstate New York, and I had I went to college, I had a graduate degree in geophysics, ended up moving to New York, and I had a gallery in Soho. Everything was really beautiful. I had a house in the East Village, and lots of beautiful relationships. Everything seemed to look great on the outside, but really on the inside, everything was falling apart. Even since I was young, I was always unsatisfied. There was something missing in my life, and I never believed in God. I didn't have a spiritual path, so I felt very this void, and I had a lot of depression. Actually, I've been on antidepressants on and off since I was in my 20s, and I was always searching for something better. I ended up getting addicted to alcohol and drugs, and that was a big part of my life, and it's actually what brought me to this path, and that's why I'm mentioning it. It looked great on the outside, but on the inside it was really, I was a mess. And so finally, in my late 20s and 30s, I actually lived here in New York City, and I ended up going into a rehab program, big program at Bay Forest in my mid-30s. That was a big change. I actually had what they called a white light experience, and for the first time in my life, I had this experience of surrender to a higher power, which I called God at the time, and it brought me to the Three Jewels, literally to the Three Jewels. There was a recovery meeting at the Three Jewels on Fifth Street, and I walked in there, and that's when I learned about Buddhism, and I wasn't God, but I was understanding so much as this higher power. And I learned about emptiness and karma, and that really made sense because I had more of a scientific mind, and I needed to have things proven to me intellectually. So I ended up studying little bit in New York with rituals, but then I met Thelma, and she came to New York and she needed a place to stay, and for some reason I was attracted to nuns and monks, and so I offered her to stay with me at my place in East Village, and she came, and she was very skillful with me, and it's interesting because she'd gotten out of a 3-year retreat herself, and I didn't even ask her, for some reason I didn't even ask her anything about the 3-year retreat. It didn't faze me or something, so she lived with me, and ended up that she introduced me to Geshe Michael and Kristen, and some things magical started happening. I didn't feel like working anymore. I didn't feel like working in an art gallery. I didn't feel like that it didn't make any sense anymore. So I ended up leaving the gallery. I sold my carriage house in East Village, and I said, oh, I'll take a few years off, and I'll just go and study Buddhism, just for a few years. And so I went to Bowie, all places. Bowie, Arizona, and they had this new university, Diamond Mountain. And within like 6 months, I was in the Tantra courses, which I'd only taken about 4 ACI courses at the time. Now, the ACI courses are the 18 courses that Geshe Michael put together, which I'm sure most of you know about. That it's really kind of a good idea to have that before you get into the Tantra courses. But for some reason, I've taken 4, and I thought I'll get them done, while I'm in So the 3-year retreat started, and for some reason I thought maybe I should do this. But I was a mess. I still was on antidepressants, and I was relapsing once in a while. But I thought I got to do this, so we built a cabin and went in and retreat. I said I'm only going in for 18 months because that felt safe to me, and I like to control everything.
Yeah.
So I went in, and sure enough, I went in with a partner, and as soon as I got in, everything fell apart. The relationship ended. I realized I couldn't meditate like I thought I would be able to. I thought I was in this cabin, and all these realizations would come to me, but instead I was severely depressed and just hanging on, and I was like fear-based. I had this fear-based drive, and it was the same fear-based drive that got me through having graduate school at Stanford, same fear-based drive that had me have a successful career, but everything that started always was crushing on me. So I went into this retreat, and the first year I did what I was supposed to, which were the lay runs, the deep retreats, or Vajrayana lay retreats, but I was going to do the whole time. So for the first year, year and a half, 2 years, I did the Vajrayana lay runs, deep retreats, but I realized I was being fear-based in them too, and so I initially ate that were my commitments to my teachers, and then I started to relax a little more and do study retreats, study and meditation retreats. The second year also I started to, after Kristen had left, I started to review the Jumpa courses. There was the Maha series, and before that I couldn't stay here single pointed on the breath. My meditations were horrible, but I could meditate on this flow of studying emptiness and intellectualizing emptiness. So that was basically my meditation until I started to study the Maha courses. And then I started to be able to sit and meditate together. And then also she gave us other meditations in the retreat that I was following. And I started to get more and more single pointed. And as I got more single pointed, the emptiness realizations started to begin. And the last year, I basically did go off the antidepressants, and it was interesting. I started to get less depressed. And I realized I was also addicted to antidepressants and to being depressed. So watching the mind, and now I see what they mean when they say meditation, not medication. It really how experience me to watch my mind and see how I could handle the ups and downs of what I was going through. So I ended up the last part of the retreat finishing the ACI courses, and I finished all 18. And then I said, I'm going to do my Baroque, which is the final exam. So a few of us did the Baroque. But for the last 6 months, I studied all the courses again. And it was amazing. All of a sudden, it started to make sense to me. It was this magic of reviewing all the 18 courses that brought me to incredible realizations. And not only that, it was like the happiest time of my life. I ended up feeling this incredible joy without having fear. Fear left me. And I can't say that it's all gone. It comes and goes. I'm still fear-based a lot of the time, but it's been a wonderful upward spiral. Being off the antidepressants, watching the mind, and studying the ACI courses and seeing how they all are interconnected with each other. So it brought me to a really beautiful ending of the retreat. So the last 6 months of the retreat were some of the most amazing, magical times. And I saw how emptiness I can prove to myself intellectually. There's thousands of proofs for emptiness. But karma, the workings of karma, I was like, well, that's something that my mom taught me. I'll probably never, see that until a much later time. But in the retreat those last 6 months, I would sit and plant seeds in the morning, and they would ripen that day. And that was amazing. It was almost like predictable. Like I knew when I did this in the morning and the afternoon. So I saw how your mind creates your world. And it was firsthand. And that was really amazing. So when I came out of the retreat, I have a slogan that I like to use now. And I like to say that we are already all enlightened. And the only thing is that I have to learn how to be human and how to become a good human. And I realize that instinctually we all want to be good. We all feel bad when we do something wrong. It's an instinct. So the emptiness, which was intellectual for me, started to kick in the instinct of understanding and seeing how karma actually does work. And so basically I think so after retreat, that's what I've been doing. I've been walking around New York, surrounded by angels, and trying to see the good in everything. I realize being positive, no matter how up and down my mind is, so important to stay positive. And the other thing I would recommend is like I do keep my stillness in the early mornings. I try to incorporate it into my practice, and I highly recommend, even if you can't do a full-on practice, to at least get up an hour earlier and do 1 hour just for yourself. If it's meditation and a little bit of yoga or some kind of prayers, it really sets your day to dedicate it to whatever you need to dedicate to that day. So I feel like that's one of the most important things that I got out of the retreat, is to see how you can really create a perfect world. It's possible. So, and the angels are everywhere. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there any more room on this side? There's one seat here on the floor, on the ground.
I can share with them.
Yeah, and there's 2 here cushions. Thank you, Bimla. That was stunning. Thank you. Okay, and Grant, if you can just speak up because the AC is really loud. If you have any questions that pop up after Bimla's beautiful discussion, please write them down on the sheet of paper. If you don't have a sheet of paper, just ask and someone will pass it to you. We'll collect them in the break. Thank you so much.
Can I make a request that I don't want to miss what you guys are saying, so if you can speak as loud as you talk to me. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, we've got to leave the AC on because there's too many people, Mike. Mike, we've got to leave it on. Yeah. Hmm? No, Mike. Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I'm Grant.
so I guess I'll start. I think the retreat for everybody was a little bit different, and I was thinking, I was thinking about it as kind of like the Wizard of Oz at the end, and everybody gets the thing that they needed. Like we were all on the journey, and one person got a heart, and another person got a brain. So I'm not kidding. It's like the retreat was like snowflakes. Everybody's was like we didn't all go on the same track and do the exact same things. It's like everybody got their own different thing. So so that was a cool thing about the retreat. And an interesting thing I found is I didn't get the things that I was expecting. I got the things that I needed, it seemed, more than the things that I wanted, which was pretty fascinating. I'd like to get into why retreat, why I did retreat, so I'll start there. I was very much like Bimla in the fact that I was just dissatisfied. I was living my life and things were going okay, I guess, but I just sort of had this feeling of, is this it? You know, it's you know, if working and, you know, I don't know, having a hobby and maybe a partner and trying to get a newer car or a better house, if that's it, is that it? And that was this burning question for me. And if it was, then I really was done. That wasn't enough for me. I was like, this just, it's not enough. If that's all there is, then forget it. So I was really at a breaking point in my life when I really started to approach a spiritual path, because I tried everything. I tried work, I've tried, you know, having a hot partner, or having public adulation, or having going for money, or, you know, hedonism, or whatever it is that you want to try to fill whatever is missing. And I tried all of them, and they didn't work. So the last thing I had tried was spiritual practice. I was like, all right, if that's all there is, I would rather smoke weed and play video games, but if I have to do that, then do that. So I started investigating a spiritual practice, and then I came across Buddhism, and I really liked the ideas that I came across at the very beginning, which is the Four Noble Truths. And the first one jumped out. Like, so it's like, yeah, I identify with that first one too. I totally get it. And so that drew me to investigate it more deeply. And I really like the fact that you're supposed to test everything. You're not supposed to. It's not just straight dogma. You're supposed to investigate it and question it. And I continue to do so. I really don't. I'm not a big fan of dogma and party line and that type of thing. I really want to question everything, and especially myself. I don't ever want to really be comfortable in my position. So that really drew me to Buddhism. And so I started studying, and I had sort of an epiphany moment with my study of emptiness, the Buddhist idea of emptiness, which is that perhaps what I'm doing might affect my world. And this sort of cause and effect relationship, which is karma, but it's also possible because things are empty. Studied it all. I'm not going to get into the details. But this idea that I could possibly be affecting my world was new to me, because I just thought, here's me, here's the world, and never the twain really shall meet, and I can't affect it, and I can't change anything. And it was the world that I was seeing wasn't that great. And then to actually have this idea I came across that made sense logically when I examined it. And I really examined it. It wasn't like, oh yeah, that sounds good. Like, I spent a long time like trying to crack it. Because of course there's a hole. Everything has a hole, right? Like, when you really dig down, you're gonna find out that there's the trick, right? and I couldn't find the trick. And I'm a pretty smart guy. Like I am, and I worked hard. And I couldn't find the trick. And so I was like, all right, I'll keep going as long as this holds up. Then I'll keep going. So I studied it, and I studied it. And then I ended up studying it down in the mountain for a while, and I studied there for a few years, and then we finished that, and then the retreat idea came up, and I was like, okay, well, if this is supposed to work, then I might as well put my money where my mouth is and push it and see if I don't do what they tell me to do, how can I say that they're wrong, right? So that was kind of my feeling. Like, I can't say something doesn't work if I've never tried it, so I figured let's do it. So I moved out there and I lived in the desert in a tent in 110 degrees, and I lived in the snow, and busted my back to just get into that retreat. Like, everybody here sacrificed to get in there. Like, people lost careers, homes, everything just to get in. And so we did that, and we got in, and then the first day of retreat starts, and the gate shuts. Oh my God, what have I done? Right? Like, so you're there, and it's like, we're out now. And it's like, oh yeah, all that stuff I studied. So good thing I'd studied, because I would have been lost. So the thing about the practices that we do is upon investigation, firsthand, if you work hard at meditating, you will be able to do the things that you read about in the books that they say that's true. What else did I didn't write anything down.
Would you repeat that? Sorry, before next to what you said.
Sure. The things that you read about in meditation that only we think maybe are only in books, you can do. If you work hard, then you're possible. So, which is awesome, right? That's awesome. So the retreat for me was really hard, right? I was mentally afflicted for a large part of it. We had a very dramatic retreat. I don't know if you're aware. So our free retreats are hard, but ours was like really hard. You know, like trying to keep your head on while there's seemingly insurmountable mental afflictions going on in my mind about what's going on. And I had one point where I was angry for a moment. I woke up angry. And I went, God, I'm going crazy. And then I had to come to a point where I worked so hard to get in there, I wouldn't quit. And I couldn't leave. And nothing was changing. The only thing that could possibly change was me. So it forced me to get into this examination of mental afflictions. And I realized that they're all fear. They're all fear-based. Anger, jealousy, greed. If you take it one level deeper, it's fear. And when you're angry, you can't think. So you can't apply your Buddhist practice. Like, I don't know if any of you studied emptiness at all, but when you're angry, you're not, yeah, everything's empty, and I want to punch you in the face. You just don't care, because you're beyond that. Like, you can't apply your practice when you're angry. When you take it to the next level and you examine, what I do is when I'm angry, you go, okay, so where's the fear? Where's the fear? Where's the fear? What is it? And then you find it, and you realize, I'm just scared. I'm just fearful or needy. And then you can think in that place. It's not as powerful as angry. Angry feels powerful, and you don't feel as vulnerable. But if you can find what the fear is, what's really driving you, then you can actually think, and then you can apply your Buddhist practice. And what I found is that these fears, almost all of them, were around being loved, being respected, feeling safe. They were all those. Like somebody cuts you off in traffic, it's because they didn't respect you, and it's like, oh, and then you don't care about me. So really what it is you got hurt because that person didn't care about you. And then you're like, oh, it's not anger anymore. And it's just like, oh, jeez. So I realized that these fears are almost all about being loved. So if you believe in a cause and effect universe, then the cure for every mental affliction is love.
Every mental affliction is what?
The cure for every mental affliction. If you see that it's, say, anger, which is actually a fear, and the fear is about being loved, what would be the cure to get rid of that anger is to love other people. So if you want to have all your mental afflictions go away, love everybody. And that is huge, right? So that's where the Bodhisattva ideal comes in. Or the love that a Buddha might have delegate something because it's really hard, and I'm not perfect at it. So, so if I say anything that I would like people to remember, is that the cure for your mental afflictions is love. And I'll finish with that. So,
Thank you. Hi.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name's Togo. I'd like to thank you, Hector, and Free Jewels, and all the ones that keep Free Jewels alive. Just to thank you for hosting us. I wrote notes because I had such a challenge to figure out how am I going to talk about 3 years in 10 minutes, but I kind of came up with something, and it kind of works out okay. So when the date was set up for this evening, Hector called all of us and asked us, answered any questions that we might have. And he made a comment that retreat was like this epic hero's journey. And I thought, wow, epic journey, yeah, that I get. But hero? Like, I don't think of myself like a hero. But then the more I thought about it, I thought about these sci-fi fantasy novels that I love reading about, and how there's like a character who comes from their hometown and is presented this unknown challenge, or this challenge to face the unknown, and they don't know what kind of fire-breathing dragons or trials and difficulties that they're going to come up with. And oh gosh, I'm scared to go off page, so we'll go. Retreat was very much like that. And I thought, you know, when Grant and I were talking about ourselves and the friends and that we watch go through retreat and them taking on their difficulties and challenges, we watched them to the end where we thought, wow, it's just like the Wizard of Oz. You go to this place and you need this help and you have all these challenges and you meet these friends and you wind up with the very thing that you needed. And you might not have even known that you needed it. So I wondered, well, how am I going to talk about that in a few minutes? And I thought, well, maybe I'll try and put together like a little outline of a story. If I was going to write a fantasy sci-fi story, you know, what would I do? Like maybe I could think of myself as that Dorothy character, but instead of from Kansas, you know, she's kind of a modern girl from New York City and has seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of life. And she hears that there's this place that she can go, that she can find the answer to everybody's suffering. And she's like, wow, that sounds great. I want to be a person who can do that. That sounds cool. There are people on the other side of the world who in our darkest hour in need, they're there day and night thinking about us and sending us, you know, all the answers to our suffering or to the questions that we have. And it is out there, and they're trying so much to get you to hear them on some level. But you have to really learn to be a really good listener. Like, how are you going to hear that and interpret what they have to say? So on my journey, I committed myself someday to that I wanted to be a person who could hear this voice of a generating, organizing, destructive energy. And you can call that God. I wanted to hear that voice. If there was one thing that I could do, or one wish that I could have at that particular moment in time, I said, that, I want that. And somehow, being bold enough to say that, or reach deeply, challenged to reach deeply to say, what do I want more than anything? Like, I could just ask for a really good career. That would be pretty cool. I could ask for a great partner. You know, that would be really cool. I could ask for enough money to maybe put together a show and perform it, you know, around the world. But I ended up, wow, if it's one thing and I really want it to come, that's it. So after I said that, you know, shortly after I met this roaring radical activist against violence, and she became my yoga teacher and started to teach me all these methods I could do to get to my true essence. And that was very cool. And then shortly after that, I met this kind of verbal fencing master of logic and dharma, master translator of ancient wisdom and languages. And he also taught on the most profound qualities of emptiness and wisdom. And when I met him, he asked, like, who are you? What do you want? You know, why don't you go read some books? You know, you don't know anything. I was like, oh gosh, she's like seeing right through me, you know. But I kept going back because he was teaching all these forms of meditation. And earlier in my 20s, when I was trying to find the answers to why life was so hard, I was reading, studying philosophies and looking to spiritual teachings and looking to the cult, anything I get my hands on to help give me some idea of how this world works, how things work. I felt like I was missing an instruction manual, and people were expecting things from me, but I didn't know why they were or how I was supposed to get to it. So he said that there is this thing called enlightenment, and in reaching that, you would be able to stop suffering, stop old age, stop death, and reach this happiness that's lasting, that doesn't happen sometimes and go away. And I was like, wow, man, that's like a really heavy claim. But something in the way he said it rang true. Some part of me said, God, I believe something's more possible than what I've heard so far. I also had in my earlier years when I was trying to find, all that, doing all that study in philosophy and the occult and spiritual matters, I had some thing happen. I went into this meditation without any training and had this experience that seemed more real, extraordinary, like more real than what I usually see every day. And I was like, wow, I tried to find somebody or some book to explain what happened to me. So by the time I met this Vajra master, wielding, debate, logic, explainer of the profound, patient one who explained over and over and over, what it was. It took me some time to finally hear him. But he said, there's all these kinds of meditations, like that thing in the back of my mind that I've been laying around, like, what? Maybe he's going to be able to help me find out what happened to me. And he also said there's these steps to enlightenment. Follow them, and you can reach this. And you'll be able to do that, not just for yourself, but learn it well, and you'll be able to help everybody else, which means that those people closest to you who might be hurting themselves, and you can't do anything to help them, no matter how much you love them, you would know what they needed from you. And I was like, yeah, sign me up. So I started to practice what he taught, and my life was changing. I'd never met or heard anything that explained the human condition so well and accurately, from top to bottom, inside and out. And I was amazed. It was the instruction manual for how life worked and what you have to do to have happiness and love and all the things you might want, a lasting happiness. So I practiced it. I loved meditating. I felt like it was I was my own science project, and going into retreat was like my own research lab. And I was kind of locked in, and I had funding and support and the four walls, and I had no distractions, no cars, no telephones, no radio. I didn't have electricity. I was running by natural light, with compost toilets, and we get into retreat, and it was something that my teacher didn't tell me exactly, directly, but through the teachings, he said, or I heard, you're going to go into retreat and you're going to meet your deadliest enemies. And the only weapons that you can go into in retreat are the teachings. Those enemies were hatred, your hatred, it was your self-cherishing and your self-absorption, and the deadliest enemy, your ignorance. And he said, those enemies are going to try and be your very best friend. And when you're not looking, they're going to try and kill you by stealing your life. So I went in, and slowly I started to see, the mistakes that I had made in my life by wanting to fulfill what I wanted, even if the goal was good. I hurt the people closest to me, and the pain was so awful because I was able to deceive myself. Like, yeah, I'm doing it, but I'm doing it for this reason. And I convinced myself that I had good reason for it. But in retreat, because your gate's locked and there's no place to go and there's nothing to distract you, you have to look at yourself. And in looking at it, I had to come clean and say, gosh, I did this thing and I felt so awful. It was like my integrity and esteem. I hurt myself so deeply. And even worse, somebody that I loved that didn't deserve it. And I didn't know how I was going to live with myself. So I had to somehow, using the teachings, go deep and keep reaching till I got to the root of what made me make the decisions I made. So, and understand them backwards and forward, inside and out, upside, downside, so I would never make those mistakes again. And in the process of that digging to get at the root, it started to show me a whole slew of lifetimes of related mistakes that I was making. And I kept going, and I will tell you that it was like being on a battlefield for days, months, years, and sometimes without like a glimmer, a glimpse of light. When the light came through, it was like a storm, and suddenly the sun parted through, and it was like, hang in there, don't give up, you will do it. And part of the task was to learn how my enemies were working with me and learn their ways so that the chains that they were using to bind me, I would learn to take those chains and use it, what they were binding me with, to free me. And that's kind of what happened. And it's just a small part of what happened in retreat, but it was a significant, long waged battle. By the end, the compassion replaced the hatred, and there was a deep love and concern for others and what they were going through that replaced my self-cherishing. And there was a developing ability to discern things accurately that replaced the ignorance. And the seas were quieted, and I was able to look deeply into the nature of all things, even if just for moments or glimpses. And you could look so deeply that you could see things that connected you to everything else. And you saw there was a fundamental essence that is in the nature of all things, in the trees and the animals. You could see, the sky as this reflection of your mind, and the thoughts go through it were just the clouds. They just came, they were there for a minute, and then they would dissipate. But your very essence is this beauty, and it's free, and it's eternal, and it's limitless, and everything is possible in every single moment. But we're not used to living in that. It's like so close to us. We can't see it like the nose in the front of your face. You kind of have to do this purifying, cleansing of your natural tendencies, and do this little kind of self-correction that happens when you're kind of close yourself off from incoming stimulus. And I saw that those were beautiful, and I came out with a deeper peace. I don't know what it's going to take to sustain it, because you want to live there. It's so happy, you feel so complete. There's not anything else that you want. So it starts to not make sense, those things that we know don't make sense, war and hatred, wanting what somebody else has. You just want to be in the moment so fully that you could find love in anything, looking at the grains of wood or cleaning a table, being a waitress. It didn't matter what you were doing. There was always available this incredible ecstasy, like you are that. It's hard to maintain it. I see I'm going to have to do more work, so it's not just periods of it, but I want it always. So I'm still on my challenge. I'm like, okay, enlightenment in one time, it maybe doesn't mean one line retreat. You probably have to work at it a bit more, but I actually really like meditating. So I'm kind of up for the challenge. I'm like, yeah, I want to go do more. If I could stay at retreat for 9, 12 years, But after this, it's okay to come out and see all the beauty and wonderful things that are around us every single day.
Thank you.
So beautiful. So hi everyone, I'm Kristen. Thanks for coming tonight, and thanks to the Three Jewels for having us. It's an honor to be here. So I feel like whatever words I would use to describe retreat just can't do it justice. Retreat was totally amazing. Some people have asked me if I miss it, and it's such a cliche, but you really do start living in the present moment, like Togo was talking about. So I don't miss retreat. I'm so happy to be here with you guys. But retreat did shape my mind and my direction. One big thing that I gained is just an incredible conviction in the truth of the path and scriptures. Like, even the most esoteric things that they describe that sound fake really do happen. They really do. We learned that. And so now I understand why it's stressed that, you should never step over scriptures, and, because they really do contain the actual instructions to get to enlightenment, and it's no joke. So another thing that I came away with is just the knowledge that the source of my suffering is my own self-grasping and nothing else. So unfortunately, I can't blame, a partner or a teacher or the political system or weather or anything anymore.
Maybe the weather.
So I'm so grateful to have this enemy so clearly in sight, so clearly in focus. Because if you want to defeat an enemy, it's probably good not to just be hazy about who the enemy is, or to think that there's lots of them when there's, it's much more simple than that. Before retreat, I had, of course, heard and read over and over and over things like, The root of cyclic existence is self-grasping. And I meditated on it, and I came to believe it, and I was doing a lot of practices to get at that problem. But despite all those practices and all of my supposed knowledge, I did a lot of self-grasping in the beginning of the retreat. Like I would write in my journal, paying like so much attention to all my precious thoughts and feelings. And getting up to meditate in the beginning, breaking my sleep at 3 or 4 in the morning. I did it, but it was a challenge. Like I was kind of pissed off about it, But yeah, it's hard. It's like the self is so heavy, But then as I went along in retreat, my enemies started to become very, very clear. And then I started to notice myself grasping on a subtle and gross level all the time, like constantly. An example of really gross level self-grasping. My partner's in the other room writing poetry, and I know he wouldn't want me to disturb him, but I do anyway because our hand crank blender is broken and I really, really want a smoothie. That's pretty gross and pretty embarrassing. Sorry, James. A little less gross. I don't disturb him, but then I find myself patting myself on the back and thinking, you're a really good person. You don't even need to tell James about your smoothie sacrifice because you're like totally selfless. Self co-ops everything. Yeah. Like even your good deeds, they just get slimed. So an example of subtle level self-grasping, and this just shows how insidious it is, what an enemy it is. I'm in meditation and a close approximation to a non-dual state, and signs of dissolution start to happen, but then there's like this little pipsqueaky little phantom voice that's like, oh my God, am I going to dissolve now? And then the dissolution stops and you're pulled out. And it's just like, foiled by the enemy again. Right? You guys all it got to a point where I would just wake up in the morning and be like, you again! At one point I was getting really, I was working really, really hard and getting kind of graspy, and I was like, what's going to happen to the me if I don't get rid of the me? So I battled this me demon off the cushion, which a partner is really, really good for. And on the cushion, I did it every session, every day, for weeks and months and then years. And the good thing is that it really started to pay off and my reality started to shift. An example of a small shift. I mean, I could talk about this for so long, like so much happens, but one small example, the writing that I had been doing in my journal about all my precious thoughts and feelings, I had stopped doing that, and for a year I wasn't writing anything. But then I started writing, but I was writing for others. And so that was a really beautiful transformation, and that's really like what we're going for. That's really the point, is to become someone who can love others and take care of others without your graspy self with all of its little tiny stupid problems getting in the way. Without the blinders of the self. So another little example, getting up to meditate in the middle of the night became just a total joy. And, you know, it's like when you don't have that heaviness, when you're not oppressed by that heaviness of that self that's telling you, oh, I'm really tired, or whatever other excuse it makes to keep you down and identified with that small self, when that doesn't have power over you, you can just do virtue pretty much all the time without obstacles. And it's really, I mean, it feels like flying. It's like, it's amazing. And then you can also get to points where, not just on the cushion, but off the cushion and waking 3D life, you are not identified with the rising and falling thoughts and emotions. You're like to the point where they have absolutely no power at all. And it's like you feel what it's like to not be bound by a small self. And it's so incredible. And it's a taste, I think, of what's to come. So how in day-to-day regular life in New York City, like how to pick away at the self-grasping. I think the most important thing to realize is that the opposite of that self-grasping is wisdom. The two cannot coexist. So, I mean, coming to places like the Three Jewels, getting Dharma teachings, studying Dharma, and of course meditating is just foundation. I mean, that's necessary. That's just, it's basically like you want to flood yourself with wisdom all the time as much as you can, and that's how you're going to gain, you know, I don't know, control, I don't know what word to use, over that really heavy, oppressive small self. And then I think exchanging self and others just as a foundation. I think that like any spiritually minded person should be doing, no matter what tradition, like exchanging self and others, just, that's like foundation. But then I would say within that practice, focus on those surrender, let go moments, and really go for those. They're always really, really hard to do. Like if you're in an argument with your partner and, you know, see if you can apologize, even when you're still holding on to, you know, your story about what's happening, and you're still thinking, you know, well, he should be apologizing to me. You know, you apologize. And it's so hard to do, but those let go moments, those surrender moments, those things are going to result in the big let goes that happen later that are the game-changing let goes. So like you rake in all those let go moments and surrender moments. You got to get really good at that. You know, and then you come to see that that's pretty much always going to be more important than whatever stupid thing you were arguing about with your partner. So, yeah, that's what I have to say. Thank you. Thank you all.
It's such an honor to be here, and it's so wonderful to be here with all these three-year retreatants. I tell you, they worked so hard in retreat. Like everybody in retreat, you can be really proud of them. These are people that are very dear to me. To see how hard they worked. They were such great allies in the trenches. You know, and I just look forward to watching how their merit ripens in the world, it's going to be beautiful. It's very emotional for me to return back to the Three Jewels. I started here 15 years ago with the ACI courses. When the Three Jewels was down on 5th Street, between 2nd and 3rd, I had no idea where those courses were going to lead me. The Three Jewels is such an oasis in this city. I'm very excited about the new incarnation, and I wish you continued success. But you're going to need a bigger space. This room is packed. It's really something. In retreat, I worked really hard on deconstructing my identity and letting go of my self-grasping, the small self. So a really funny thing happened to me when I left retreat. I had a really challenging time proving my existence. I went into a Verizon store to try to get a cell phone. And they kept saying, "Our system says you don't exist." And I'm like, wow, Verizon's talking like the heart surgery. There is no James Conner. There is no person that wants a cell phone. So my quest to start to document that I was a real person led me to a very small government office in very rural Arizona. And while I was waiting, I struck up a conversation with a rancher. And he's one of the first people I've seen now in the outside world after 1,000 days in retreat. And so like, we're just like, totally connecting, and it's just like amazing. And he just stops and he goes, "You know, you're nice." And so I try to explain to him that I've been in this mountaintop cabin for 1,000 days, you know, meditating on love and compassion, and forgiveness and wisdom. And his response is just wonderful. "I bet my sheep would like you." I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to offer you a job. I'll give you $30,000 in a trailer, and you can follow my sheep around. So apparently there's a perk to doing 3-year retreat. Even if you're from New York City, you too can be a shepherd. So tonight in this room, there's so many faces that I went to class with. There's so many of you here in this room that I taught meditation to. You know, and at the time, I thought I was helping you. But I found in retreat, you were the ones helping me. So I really thank each of you. And looking at you now, I think I need to tell you something that you can put into practice tomorrow. Like, what are 3 things that I can tell you that you can use in your practice tomorrow? And the first thing is absolute conviction in the truth of the path. All the teachings are true. All the antidotes to the mental afflictions that you face daily are real. You can experience lasting transformations of mind that will shift how you experience reality. And instead of being pushed around by that voice in your head that you identify as you, you'll defeat it. Try to feel what it would be like to get that out of the way. And then you can truly feel connected to everyone. You start to really understand your deep connection to everyone. It's what you've wanted your whole life. And it's true, and it can happen. So more than anything, I want you to know that you've found a beautiful path here. You have found beautiful teachings. Study hard, practice, meditate. It will take you where you want to go. And it's so nice to be able to sit here, like all these retreatants, and look at you and say, yes, it's real. The second thing I want to tell you about is priorities. And this came as a big surprise to me. When I was in retreat, I had had a long 14-year business career in which I owned an ad agency in New York City. I employed people. I helped entrepreneurs make millions of dollars. And I spent a lot of effort doing this. I had a career. And in retreat, I didn't think about it once. For 1,000 days, I wasn't like, that was a really good conference call I had. That was a great business meeting. I'm so glad I got to work on that product launch. And it was shocking to realize all the things that I had put so much effort, so much time, so much money behind, in the face of ultimate things, meant nothing. Nothing. And I share that with you because I know you're busy New Yorkers. I was too. What did I remember during retreat? That was surprising too. I remembered every moment that I spent in places, Dharma centers like the Three Jewels, learning ultimate things. I remembered teaching people how to meditate on ultimate things. I promise you, when you start getting to a place where dissolutions are starting to happen, the only thing you will remember are ultimate things that you can take with you into the next life. And it's great to know that now. To know what I need to be spending the rest of my life doing so clearly. So I tell you, as busy New Yorkers, as busy people around the world with our modern lives, from a deep place of personal experience, if you're not making time in your day to study ultimate things, to meditate on ultimate things, please reevaluate your priorities. What is going to matter for you in the end? What do you take with you when this life ends? You will never regret the moments you spend studying ultimate things. Okay? Third thing. I want to speak a little bit about the power of forgiveness. If you meditate, there's a powerful meditation technique which you need to know. If you meditate on ordinary objects, you get ordinary results. If you meditate on extraordinary objects, you get extraordinary results. So what you want to do in meditation is create your image of an enlightened being and the qualities that they embody. And every day you're habituating yourself to the enlightened mind. And by staying focused on the enlightened mind and how the enlightened mind sees the world, sees other beings, you're creating a portal. And you let go of the small self and you step through. What you find in retreat is you can't step through that portal if you have any anger or resentment in your heart. It shouldn't be surprising, right? Enlightened beings, the enlightened mind, is just love and wisdom. It doesn't have any anger or resentment. And so you have to work really hard on letting those things go. I thought a lot about the Buddha's teachings. In no sutra does he say you should blame other people for your problems. In no sutra does he say that you should hang on to your list of angers and resentments. I thought a lot about Jesus. I'd often bring Jesus into my meditation just to review those beautiful teachings on forgiveness. What does Jesus say to Peter when he comes and says, how much should I forgive a brother or sister who sinned against me? Up to 7 times? And Jesus is like, no, 70 times 7 times. That's a lot of forgiveness. And I'm pretty sure it doesn't mean on that 491st time, that's it. It's just by then, you're in such a habit of mind that you can love someone no matter what they do to you. When you discover you can love someone no matter what they do to you, that kind of love is mighty. That kind of love is powerful. But you won't know until you're really tested. So embrace the tests that come on the path. They will come. It's designed that way. And if you find that you're putting in so much effort, but you're waiting for the spiritual realizations to pop, examine what resentments and angers you have and forgive. Let go. That's what it's going to take to get through the portal. My very favorite thing about the Mahayana path, the path of the greater way, is it wants to free every being from suffering. Take every being to the light. That means to get to heaven, we all have to go together. And I wouldn't want it any other way. So looking at each of you, I just want you to know, if you study, if you meditate daily, if you're willing to make that your life's priority, and if you're willing to forgive others as we all stumble along the path, you can achieve your goals. And it will be better than anything you could possibly imagine. So you can do it. You have to do it. And we're all counting on you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, James. Thank you, everybody. I don't know what I'm going to say. It's funny. Maybe this is a special message. Good, I don't have to do it. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm so grateful to be here. I'm so honored to be here. I feel so blessed. I feel so humbled. Truly, I feel so humbled to sit next to these lovely beings here to my right. In front of me, all of you. I got my ass kicked in 3-year retreat. I'll just be honest. It was, as Charles Dickens says, the worst of times and the best of times. For me, it was the hardest things I've ever done in my life, but it was also the best thing I've ever done in my life. And I'm really grateful that I had this opportunity to do it. It's like one of those things. I felt like it was only going to come this one time in my life, and I had to get it while I could. It was so precious. And I was somebody that was really like, I guess the underdog here, in terms of I was the long shot, like, in every race, like, I wasn't even supposed to be in this retreat. Like, I kind of came in within like 2 weeks' notice. I was granted permission to do the 3-year retreat. So I have a little unique story in that regard. But that's not because I totally admire all the the time people spent studying this beautiful lineage. My experience is just a little different as usual for me. But anyway, I would say the beginning of my path was just a deep sense of hopelessness in life, which maybe some people can relate to. It's funny because somebody is in this room right now that I went to high school with, and it's so it's a really beautiful experience to be surrounded by all these different people, to bring all these different groups of people together for me right now. Because I can remember in high school, I was hitting a big bottom in my life. I was basically, I was like suicidally depressed in high school, and I didn't really understand the point of school, of life, of work, of the whole thing. You know what I mean? The whole American dream. I couldn't really muster up the oomph to even go after it. So my experience is a little different in the sense that I never really got it so much to leave it. I couldn't even, I kind of did a little, but I wasn't like James here, and there's no comparison, really. It's like we all have our unique journey to take, and that's what's so beautiful.
I think you were smarter.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's, I was blessed with some seeds in my house with my father, who had some books laying around, like the Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads and different Buddhist texts. We had a dog named Zen at one point. So it was kind of, little things were getting in my mind as a kid. But I used to go to church. I was telling Hector earlier today, because I was going to figure this out. Don't you know? I'm going to church. And a lot of people, where I grew up, I saw a lot of suffering, a lot of pain, and I was trying to find a way out. But the thing I noticed, it was interesting, I went to church, I like to debate, I like to argue about things, and I tried to argue about the Bible and how they were interpreting it, and people were like, no, this is what it means, honey, and I was like, I don't think so. And I remember going home, and my dad saying, well, you don't have to go and have them tell you how to interpret it, why don't you just read it yourself, and that was one of the things that drew me to this path, to Diamond Mountain especially. I went there in 2009, and I saw people debating spiritual truths, having these really intense discussions about things I had been thinking about my whole life, and attractive young people doing this, and all sorts of people from all walks of life, really passionate about ideas I was really excited about. And so it was such a great experience to find these people that wanted to talk about the very thing I really cared about. And so I was drawn like that, and then while I was there, I heard about 3-year retreat, and I just had this interesting intuition that I had to do it, and I don't know how to explain it more than that, and I just knew I was going to do it, and I just basically begged to do it, and I was lucky that Grant was a great teacher to me. He told me basically if I wanted to do it, I needed to help other people to do it. So I got to build, and I got to build Kristen's cabin with Grant, and it was such a powerful, beautiful experience. Some of the people here helped build that cabin, and it was, you know, and I remember I was crying at night. Like I remember it was like 11 p.m. We're outside putting the lath on the straw bales. It's freezing. I'm crying. It's like, you know, freezing rain coming down. And I like go inside because he's working inside with the heater. And I'm like, what is going on? It's not fair, you know. And I'm just like, you know, just like, I mean, I can't do this anymore. You know, he's like, suck it up. And I was like, one of the best teachings I ever got. You know? And I was like, okay, you know. And I remember I just sucked it up. He's like, you want to do this retreat? You know, go Bill, shut up. You know, and I was like, yeah, I do want to do this retreat. And I did. I wanted to do it more than anything in the world. And I kind of feel like that for me in my spiritual life, that's how I am. I'm all or nothing. It's got to be that way. And that's what makes things happen fast and quick. You know, if you want to grow, I would say if you put your spiritual life first, you'll never regret it. It's not been my experience. Like he was saying, I didn't mourn the dumb things I did, try and take refuge in life on, you know, other things. I thought about the things I did that I hurt other people in retreat. That was some of the memories I had. I did have a lot of memories of that, like it's subtle things, because I'd already cleared away a lot of the gross things in my life, but I got to replay some of the real subtle things, and that was good to relive and just purify my heart. You know, that, you know, and I'm grateful for the time. I mean, that's why retreat is so valuable. You have this time, this precious time to like clear out all those little impurities in your heart, because we accumulate them. And you can just go drink a latte and kind of forget about it, even though you didn't smile at that person on the street. But they accumulate in there, you know, for me anyway. And so I was grateful to have that time to just purify, to keep purifying, and just to keep asking, basically, to become pure enough to have the realizations, you know, that I always wanted to have since I was a kid. You know, really, I found like, you know, I took refuge in a lot of worldly things, you know, and I would say too that, you know, if you have hope in anything, by God, do it. You got to do it till you're satisfied, you know, like the song says, whatever it is. And I had to, you know, drink a lot of alcohol. I had to do a lot of drugs. I had to do a lot of, you know, activities that, you know, would seem bad. A lot of self-destructive things. I had to do it, you know, completely until I was hopeless with it, you know, until I was like, all right, there's nothing else I have hope in but doing a 3-year retreat. You know what I mean? Like I really don't have hope in anything. I don't have hope in the family, into the money, into the prestige. And so I think it's a great event when you get to that point. Like it's actually quite a blessing, you know. And so, because otherwise, if you're in retreat and you still have hope in something, the things I didn't do, they did come in my mind. You know, well, I didn't try that. You know, like, oh, maybe I could have got some satisfaction there. You know, so you know, I'm really glad that I tried everything I did, so I could be totally hopeless, so that I could stay in the retreat. You know, and so when I was granted permission to do the retreat, Mama Christie said, okay, you can do it. You can do it for 6 months, and you'll go in the guardhouse. And I remember I was like, good, you know, yay, I'm so happy, thank you so much, you know, but it was like a test, you know, because the guardhouse was kind of it wasn't the hot spot to go do the retreat, you know, but I thought it was a beautiful place, and there's trees, and there was, you know, there was hawks that had a hawk's nest right outside when I opened the door. You know, that's the benefit of the retreat too, is you get really close to the animals. You know, I felt like, I was telling this earlier too, but I felt like Beastmaster. like I felt I was feeding foxes and cotamundis out of my hand, and ringtail kitties. I had a skunk I would hold and pet. Like, it was just like, I mean, it was really cool. And that was one of the things, you get really lonely. So, you know, it was like the animals would come, the javelinas, I'd hear them. They were like a gang of Harleys or something, and I was like, the javelinas are here, like they're outside. Javelinas, I'm so happy to see you. They come around, they're all snapping, and you know, like, oh yay. It was interesting. That was something I was talking to somebody earlier about. She was asking me, you know, I was thinking about the obstacles. I thought, well, what am I going to share with you guys? I don't know, I guess the benefits and then also the obstacles. And for me, I'd say one of my worst obstacles, or the strongest obstacle, is loneliness. Like, I got to see I'm actually a really social person, you know, like I actually love people. I like to have friends. I used to communicate a lot. Like I would text a lot, call people on the internet a lot, like from prior to 3-year retreat. So going in with no communication then was like, you know, like it was really hard for me. I mean, and I you know, and my circumstances changed a lot throughout retreat, which I won't go into in this talk because it's way too short, and I'm going to write a book about that. But, was a lot of changes for me. I lived in 3 different cabins, went through a myriad of interesting affairs and things, and so anyway, but I got to be alone for a big chunk of the time, and that was something I'd never done in my life, and as an adult, to really just be alone, like no relationship, no partner, no escape, no TV, no going to movies, no going out to eat, no internet, no little text to your friend to feel good about yourself. So there was a lot of pain in those times alone, to just sit and be like, can I just be okay with myself alone? And I had to face my worst demons, which was a lot of, am I good enough? That was like a lot of my worst fears was I'm not good enough as a human being, period. And and that's what drove me to the spiritual path. Ironically, it's also my demon. It was like if I hadn't had such a ferocious feeling about that, like such a desperation of feeling so worthless, I might not have gone for a 3-year retreat. So on one level, it was like kind of a blessing that I felt so extreme about it. But I also got to see that honestly, part of my motivation for a 3-year retreat was that trying to redeem myself because of feeling so unworthy, and feeling so not good enough. And so I was grateful to have those dark nights of the soul in the 3-year retreat alone, and just to get to cry those tears and just kind of say goodbye to that self. It's a self-cherishing. It's just another form of it, right? But so to kind of just let that go too, and then just feel kind of empty, and then open, and then you can be a vessel. And so I think for my spiritual path now is evolving a lot. Like if I got to do this talk, like some people did quiet retreat teachings, and I would have said something way different, and then immediately like a month after, way different. And so it's interesting. Is like I'm glad we're doing this now because this is evolving so much. The results of the retreat are kicking in, and there's all these different awakenings and risings happening. So I really don't know what's next, but I feel like on the cutting edge. And that feels really exciting. I mean, that's like how I want to live my life. I feel like I'm on the cutting edge. Like, is this true? What is going to work for me in the future? I don't know. What worked for me then may not work for me then. It's like, and it's exciting, like to get to test everything. So I'm so grateful that I just had the opportunity to do it and the support. I mean, it's like a dream come true. I didn't go to college. I didn't. And it's not like, oh, poor me, but I didn't have a lot of money for that or anything, and I didn't have a lot of hope in it either. But I did get to go to the University of Enlightenment. I'm working on my PhD in enlightenment. And I feel like that's what it's going to pay off. Because when I die, money's not going with me. The guy's not going with me. You know what I mean? Like this is, I got to work out my own salvation. And I'm grateful to have tools, to do that. And I'm grateful to have a network of people that are also doing that, And we're all at our own unique level and place. And there's so many practices for wherever we're at. That's also what I learned, different practices for different times of your life and different moments. And so it's so beautiful that they're all there because, what I was doing at the first retreat, I'm not doing necessarily right now. Things have shifted. And so I just want to end with this quote that it's one of my favorite quotes by Mother Teresa. And I'm a wannabe saint, that's why I did 3 retreats. And that's another thing I've had to really come to grips with. Like, I've been so humbled. I mean, really, you just see how hard it is. These people are so amazing. I mean, like people that really achieved, that level of compassion to serve all beings. I mean, it's so hard. It's so hard to give yourself like that. And so I really am in awe of them and in awe of all the people that have gone before in this lineage and in all spiritual traditions, truly. So Mother Teresa says, in the silence of the heart, God speaks. If you face God in prayer and silence, God will speak to you. Then you will know that you are nothing. It is only when you realize your nothingness, your emptiness, that God can fill you with himself.
Thank you so much. We've got a 10-minute break. I know it's warm. We'll cool the room down. If you have questions, this is the time to write them down, pass them to Mr. Sam, who's the question man. And then that rhymed in time on the poem. I didn't even realize I wasn't. And then we'll start back at 1:45, yeah? At 8:45. So there's refreshments outside. Take a break. Write your questions. Give it to Sam, the question man.
Thank you. Can I get these let me just freeze the recording tab. Can you get them slides? Can you get them slides?